Because as an entrepreneur, your first couple years, your time is away from your family or the things that you love doing most. You can't kick it like that. You can't, your relationships become strained. On top of that, I'm chasing a doctorate. So I'm switching my career, getting my doctorate, and I have a newborn. So Story was born my first semester inside my doctoral program. So being able to I was petrified of that. I mean, how am I going to continue school? My name is Mario, and this is my dad demo. Born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, North Side. My mom and my pops moved to Milwaukee in 82.
Okay.
I'm 36. I was born in 84. I was a preemie baby. I was not expected to live, actually. I was 3.5 months premature. I was 1 pound and 12 ounces. I was in the hospital on an incubator for over 3 months. And through then, my mom and my dad, I don't want to use the term separated, but I guess some infidelities happened. And it was something that I really didn't catch wind to, and we'll touch on it in a bit, when I became a father. So that was where a lot of things became full circle. But growing up, single parent household, my pops left when I was about 2 or 3 years old. I actually was in the special ed class until I was 10. So the short bus shorty, all of that, I had classes with kids in wheelchairs, deformities. I was diagnosed as emotionally disturbed because I threw temper tantrums and all of that. So you wouldn't think it because I'm kind of chill now, right? But looking back on that, if you fast forward to middle school, high school, I grew up a little bit of a loner. So going to school, making friends was initially tough because I had an eating disorder when I was younger. So being able to, I guess, navigate through that, like I was the kid that had the lunchbox and the juice and all of that. And that lack of conversation with my pop, because him and my mom eventually went so bad that he stopped coming around. Like it got to the point where I talked about earlier, me being a preemie baby, like my aunties and people on his side of the family was like, that baby ain't yours. He came this month too early, all of that. So that put that strain. But as I got older, you look just like your daddy when they found out that I was kind of smart and all of that. So being able to, I guess, my mom did her best to keep me away from it, but my sister kind of kept it 100 with me as I got older with me about those things. But that made me have some resentment towards my dad. Because now you go to school, first day of school, and Pops ain't there. You go on to graduations, and Pops missing graduation. And the whole time, I was how we say, you fast forward to middle school, my dad lived down the street from my mom. So, in Milwaukee, it's like every other block is an intersection, right? So if you're going to a specific side of town from the south side to the north side, I literally probably stayed from age 9 or 10 until I was, probably I was grown. They still live there to this day. I was probably like 3 stop signs away from my pops. And the only time that I really got to see him was when, like, my latter years in high school. So I think that his relationship with my mom deteriorated so bad to where he just couldn't. He knew he would have to go through her to see me. And I don't think he wanted to deal with that. I think he got used to life not necessarily dealing with that. And it took me a long time to even see that perspective because we never even had that conversation for real. Like, I know you left, but you knew where I was at. I'm 2 stoplights away, And it was times where he he would pretty much stand me up on Christmases. I will remember, uh, and forgive me if I'm backtracking, but I will remember uh specific Christmases and birthdays. Like I will open up all my gifts and I would stand by the door and nothing. And it was times where I would call like my auntie house, and or maybe they would call or something like that, and I would hang up because I got tired of getting disappointed. So I think a lot of my quick to cut people off came from that, because I'm like, you left and you my pop, and now I feel like you ignore me. I feel like that you scapegoat me when I come to see you at work. And now I'm growing into you. Like, I got your skin tone. I got certain facial features. Like I can see that now. Like my mama can't really shield me. The streets can't make me forget about that pain. Like that's something. And I know that this isn't necessarily going to. You're not gonna come by her house to build with me. So before I turn 18 and I just forget about you, let me try this. And to a fault it worked. To a fault it worked. Um, my mom wasn't necessarily happy with it, um, but she didn't necessarily feel angered about it. When my mom, when learning those things, how I am as far as like independent thinking and preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. Um, my mom instilled those qualities in me. My mom actually um, told me certain things that were man law. Never leave the house without a watch on. Uh, Look a person in the eye when they talk to you. Because she will always name the consequence if you don't. So that was how things would reach me. Like, okay, what happens if I don't do this? Okay, so if you don't look a person in the eye, it makes you think that they lying to you or that you lying to them. If you look away when you shake their hand, you're not sincere. So this is how you learn these qualities, right? My mom was strict because she didn't want me to get into trouble. Like it was past jobs where I would be angry that things would happen to my vehicles. One job I used to work at, my car got broke off, and just because the window already was busted, trap car. When you're 15 and 16, you can't afford nothing too rich. But I stole some money from that job, and I got fired. They considered juvie, all of that, but they just let me live. And I think that was probably the biggest disappointment my mom ever had. And I would look back and say, you can raise me to have good values. You can instill great values on how to respect a woman. But I think because my dad was my mom's heart. Like my mom moved from Tennessee, small town, grandmama, to follow my pops up here to Milwaukee. And to that be taken away from you, and you got to watch this man have kids and be with somebody else that talk down on you and talk down on me. You don't, that bitterness is going to unfortunately carry over to me, whether it's inadvertently or, we never had that. Your dad left, so I felt this way. I'm sorry. We never had that conversation. Um, I think that a woman could raise a man as long as that, if a relationship ends, because it's different. Like if you're married and you're happy, 2-parent household, if y'all married and get divorced and it's a 1-parent household, or if you're just single, those three things are different. So it's different parameters. Um, and as far as how that woman was raised, my mom had my grandmama, in her life forever, but my granddad I never met. He died when my mom was 2. So being able to not have that particular, okay, this is how I need to grow. Like my mom had older brothers and stuff like that, but internally nothing really replaces, your pop. Um, so I think my mom, she did the best that she could. She gave me a lot of freedom to be like, okay, if you fuck up, this could happen. If you fuck this up, this could happen. And I'm just gonna let you learn on your own. I'm gonna let you bump your head. So when I started bumping my head, the whole thing with the job, being on the block, um, kicking it with the wrong people, wearing certain rags and picking up certain, gang connotations and all of that. Aside from school, she let me get one bad report card. And it was Kurt's. It was 1 million because my mom and my dad, um, they didn't go to college. Like my dad graduated high school. He working in the factories and things like that because he's a hardworking handyman. He's good with his hands. My mom got her associates when I was 6, and that was one of her biggest things: pushing education. And my sister on my mom's side, she eventually got her bachelor's and her master's and all of that. So I'm like, if you can do this, and you got to get rides and stuff like that everywhere, and my sister is small in stature, I have to be able to, carry that and move it forward. Um, I never really thought that me. First, I didn't think I was gonna be a father. Period. Um, So now that you come across, this big threshold, the first thing I'm thinking is, dang, I can't spend money on myself like that no more. No, dang, I can't do this, I can't do that. And it wasn't necessarily nothing social, but just like I'm more of a person where I like to save for like rainy days, and I get that from my dad and from my mom. But then it transitioned as I noticed her belly getting bigger. And I remember I went to an ultrasound, and he gave me the middle finger in the ultrasound, like 3D ultrasound. I was like, Story, move your hand from your mouth. I'm like, oh hell no, this ain't gonna work. Um, so I'm like, he's going to immediately get a slick mouth from his pops. So those are things I thought about as well. And even before that, when I found out that he was a boy, I was happy and pissed at the same time. I was happy because I didn't have to keep a machete at the door in case I had a girl and, you know, dudes come over for prom and, or you try and come over, you try and sneak into your room. I didn't did all that already, so I'm gonna know everything that you're doing. Sad. It's too sad. I'm the big hater dad. It's too sad. But I was pissed because I didn't want for him to go through a lot of what me and my dad went through, and me and his mom are together, right? So how does that look? Um, like I said previously, I didn't want to overcompensate, but I wanted to make sure that I'm present and I grow as a dad every day, and I have a balance between that school and being an entrepreneur and growing up incomparable. And that honestly was probably the hardest thing with being a father because it was a time I believe Store was probably 5 or 6 months old, and this is when babies are just giddy for everything, right? And it was a time where uh, I would go with his mom to go pick him up from his godmother's house. And he got excited. He was like, he saw me. I was like, dog, that little dude love me. That was when I just was like, all right, all right, I'm a for real dad. And it was a lot of that anger kind of shifted because you never really notice a love that you needed until you become a parent. I always say it's a love that you have that you didn't know what you needed, right? So, and now you start to notice as he starts, like he took his first steps on my mom's birthday before he turned 1. So being able to put those things together, you never forget those, and you see that like he back to the whole lyric. I wanted to walk just like you. I wanted to talk just like you. My mama said, "Oh, I can look too much," and I thought just like you. Like he has certain features of mine. He walks like me. He says certain things like me, and born on 2 completely different sides of the country. Um, it's different genes, and you realize that as a father, you want to spend that time. You want to teach him how to play basketball. You want to, make sure that he enjoys cartoons but still reads because the education piece is important. And more so not being, I guess, so oppositional and realizing the differences in parenting between, mother and father. Maybe necessarily just me and his mama, but just wider scope in general. That was imperative for me to make sure that I scaled down my aggression because I'm a big person. Your word is everything. Once you lose your word with me, it's not nothing coming back from that. If I can't trust you with nothing small, I can't trust you with nothing big. And once you break one of the two, it's hella hot water to get through it. And we've had those moments. And I knew that I didn't want my son to be like, I don't see my dad because pop and mom don't get along. Like you can't have that. I don't talk to my dad because, you know, him and mom aren't talking. Because I went through that. Right. So being able to notice that that's coming, and you notice that with his brother in a sense, not necessarily him not talking to his pops because of his mom and his pops, but just because sometimes that choice gets made, right? And sometimes when two people don't work out, that's a bit of that sacrifice. And an important piece that I took from that and learned for myself, um, I have to be the best in the best mental shape that I could be in order for me to be a great dad to begin with. And it took to go through a lot of pain, a lot of reflection between me and my pop, and being able to downsize my mental and just learn the importance of like spending that time, taking a kid to a basketball game, uh, playing catch, teaching them how to shoot a basketball, teaching them what the game of basketball and football is about, teaching them different colors, teaching them how to connect blocks, um, sitting and coloring with them, doing push-ups. Those are things because when you work out, you notice your son looking at you and 2 and 3 years old doing a push up, not really knowing what he's doing. He just see his dad. That makes me love him even more, right? And those are things that I didn't have. And my pop, slick Jerry curl, he was cold at karate. Like he was like halfway the black Bruce Lee until he got beat up a couple times. That's my cousin used to tell me, right? So noticing that I'm like, okay, these are just things that I wanted to emulate because it was him. I thought about taking up karate when I was young. I'm like, you see the Karate Kid a couple times, like, nah, I'm cool. But you notice that your offspring takes after the things that you do just because you're the first person that they watch. Kids are sponges in that. So noticing that, man, it's a different type of love that you didn't know you needed until you got it. When I first found out about story, definitely unplanned. Um, I was getting ready to go back to school, and how we talked about earlier, how education is hella important. My mom used to be that parent that went to her job and bragged about me, had my degree and stuff in her cubicle and all of that. And the first thing that her coworkers would say when they saw me said, "Oh, you went to school and you got this degree," not knowing that I went to WM and I dropped out. I went, dropped out, kicked it on the block, worked in various capacities, and for 3, 4 years, I'm like, I'm just gonna rap. I'm gonna do this, but I knew I was smart. I knew I could do it, but I just couldn't find exactly what my niche exactly was. So I want to go to school and get a 4 year degree and get a job just to please my moms. And how can I have that balance and do what I want to do? Because I knew I wanted to ultimately own my own, right? I didn't want to just have to get up and have to answer to somebody, but it took a while to get there. And I think having a son pushed that forward. I was working at a job I wasn't happy with. I was miserable. And some of that got took out on his mom. And his mom, her relationship with her dad, nah. So you notice a lot of uh, our miscommunications and things came from a steeper level. My pops wasn't there. Yours, your pops wasn't there, was there. Y'all still don't connect. Story wasn't planned. How could we make this work? As far as looking good on paper and having a kid, it tends to hit a boiling point when you realize you have different parenting styles. And a lot of it has to do with how you grew up in your own beliefs, right? And just differences that you go through via postpartum. With postpartum, um, her mom passed away the month after Story was born. So you're going through postpartum. And if you remember, that's Hurricane Harvey. We already aren't in the best of spaces. Um, and I had to be forgiven. I had to forgive myself for even getting myself in that particular situation. And two, aim to see things from her perspective. And that took a long time. That took a long time. And I think if I had a dad I went through this. If Pops would have told me I went through this with your mama, not necessarily going deep into detail, but like I could understand. It probably would have been a lot less arguments. It probably would have been uh, a lot less back and forth. It would have been a lot less of you know, leaving, coming back, leaving, coming back. Um, it was a lot of things that I said like during um, the pregnancy that I wish I could take back. Um, but I don't find myself a lot saying I have to do this for you because my dad didn't do it for me. Um, I notice a lot more of that when I'm around him and his brother because his brother, um, his dad left at an early age, and you could just tell different. I won't even say different. I'm immediately able to identify with certain behaviors that he, exudes because he doesn't have a dad in the picture. Like it will be times that I would go spend time with Story. He would get sad because his dad isn't there. And I can identify with that because now I'm thinking about these kids that I went to school with and I just would see out in public kicking it with their pops, yada yada, and my pops ain't there. So I'm able to have these conversations with him, and now he's a little older. He kind of gets it a little bit, but his mom doesn't really get it because that's the point where like woman raising a man, it's loaded, right? Especially going through those particular parameters. And my son's mom is a phenomenal mom. Like she protects the kids with every and it's the mother gene, right? And sometimes we clash about that. And I'm like, I'm just taking them to the car wash. It's like that's it. I'm just taking them to the car wash. But no, this is all right. I get it. But a lot of those conversations that I wish I would have had with my pops. Like, why did you leave? Like, did you go through this with my mom? Like, in my 30s, I'm still uncomfortable having those conversations because that pain is still there. And that's something that I don't want my son to go through. So, no matter if we're in a good space or not, I'm always going to be, present. Like, I'm not missing birthdays, graduations, because you don't forget that. I start being present, being and balancing being present with being busy, honestly. Because for me, I want for my son to see me active. I want for him to see me going after my goals and aiming to make history for me and for him. And that gives him, that fire underneath his belly to be like, my pop did it, I could do it. It's like I used to see my sister get up and go to school 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, catch two buses, then go to work or get up and go to work at 4:30 in the morning. Got class at 8. I would sit in they didn't even necessarily call them like a lunchroom where she went to college at, but wherever pretty much the den, whatever it was, and wait for her to get out of class. I want for my son to have that same type of visual type of okay, my pop is working, okay, my mom is working, okay, I need to make sure that I find my niche to build a great life for me and impress them by doing it for me. I don't need for him to be the typical lawyer, doctor, anything like that. Me and his mom are both doctors. If you decide to be a full on creative and, do something in that area, completely dope. I don't look at you, no particular way. Um, But as long as you make history with doing it, because now that's your name. And his middle name is Emery, story of a leader. So that's what I expect for you to do in whatever aspect, and that's where that foundation piece is so important because kids are sponges, and with kids being sponges, they're going to first emulate what they see, in their parents, because those are going to be their first two heroes, right? So noticing how that's important and just building up that foundation for one, him to be respectful to people, be respectful to women, um, garner that same respect back from women and men. The basics important to look at somebody in the eye, shaking a hand, keeping your word. Posture is everything. Whenever you're in a meeting, whenever you're sitting with your people, any like those basic things, because your presence is going to speak for you before you enter a room anyway, before you talk, and that's something that is critical, for me. Like whenever you go handle business, you dress like you handling business. Um, don't act like that you're better than the next person because you may be better off financially. That's something that because God can take anything and everything from you. Blink of an eye. And my areas of improvement, damn, my areas of improvement, better communication with his mom. Better communication with his mom. One, I love her for who she is and what she does for Story and for his brother. Um, even though two people butt heads, it happens. Um, not being making sure that he doesn't see that. Making sure that because he has in the past, and making sure that my stresses aren't being taken out on him. My stresses aren't being taken out on his mom. My stresses aren't being taken out on his brother. Um, and continuing to work on enjoying the moment of them being kids. Because now I'm noticing with him being, 3, I'm looking at baby pictures when he's like born. I'm like, dang, where did the time go? And you realize you can't get that time back. You realize that, you know, rolling out and being at different spots, that doesn't supersede fatherhood. Like I'm not a fan of Catboy. I'm not a fan of Paw Patrol, but I'm finding myself getting him different Spider-Man joints. Getting him because that's what he loves, Spider. You just want to hear his voice say that, right? Um, so that's the piece where I'm like, okay, I'm not rushing you growing up. I'm gonna be more cognizant. I'm gonna get you this dinosaur shirt as opposed to this Nike shirt. Damn. That was a piece that was an area of improvement for me because I'm like, dog, all right, he ain't grown. We can wear these things, right? So noticing that aspect, um, continuing to work on not pushing off my expectations on him, and continuing to be more patient. That was something that I had a really big issue with um, when he was born. Just being completely transparent because I didn't grow up with my little sisters behind me. So there, after me in the house, there was nobody. So I'm like, I don't really know like the day to day nuances of parenting and fatherhood. But let's not use this as an excuse to be a deadbeat or a terrible dad or somebody that's just not present. Because a lot of that, I noticed a lot of my flaws fell into when I was getting my doctorate. I couldn't be as present. I tried my best. You go to daycare, you watch them, you do all those things, you spend time with them, watch sports, teach them things, et cetera. But there was times where I'm worrying about my dissertation and my mind ain't there. There's times when me and his mama be into it and my mind ain't there. And looking back, you regret it, but you're almost glad that it happened early as opposed to him being 14 and 15, you know, and these things happening. Um, my greatest fear as a dad is not seeing him grow up. And if it's twofold, my greatest fear as a dad is burying him. that is my great, like that, not being able to see him grow up in the piece of one, not being present, um, two, if me and his mom ever fell off to the point where me and him couldn't converse, or I couldn't see him, or I couldn't spend time with him. And another piece of that is him growing up and watching for 12. It's natural as a black man, you don't want to have those conversations with your kid that based off of how you look, where you come from, who your parents are, what they've accomplished and what they haven't accomplished. Because quote unquote accomplished parents, that's why you bring up like the tears and just looking good on paper, right? You look like that you're privileged, but you don't think that, you know, both parents have busted their entire ass to get to where they had to get to, and lived hard knock lives on separate parts of the country and came together and had a beautiful kid. And now this kid grows up, and now cops and people in positions of authority he might look up to. You know, as a kid, you would go to the firehouse, stop, drop, and roll, all of that. The cops would play with you, get you McDonald's, bring it to your school, yada yada. Um, it's a different time, and that fear is seeing my kid, you know, face down on the ground, crying for his mama, crying for his pop, or finding them on the news or something after going to the store getting some Skittles. You don't. Those are the worst fears ever. And as a parent, it makes you protective, but it's just you have to control the controllables, right? Because if you're too overbearing and too, you know, mama and papa bearing on the kid, it's gonna make him be even more. I guess I don't want to say the word disenchanted, but just make him be even more, you know, have more of a desire to want to see what's out there, see what's in the streets, and that can lead into run-ins with the law, and they will look for specific individuals that look like, oh, you look like that individual that broke into that car down the street, so we just gonna take you in. You can say it ain't you all you want to. Black men, we can't go outside without getting shot. We can't sit in the car without getting shot. We can't go to the store without getting shot. We can't walk away without getting shot. It's like what can you do? And it's something that you definitely fear, but you just have prayer in the Most High that you can control it and live a long, fulfilling, successful life, and hopefully y'all live as pops. Um, so with that, teaching them how to move is a balance, right? That's something that me and his mom definitely discuss a lot, really, when he was younger. Not that he's older now, but these are the police. You listen to everything that they say. It does not matter what they say. It doesn't matter who's with you. Do not try and act tough and act cool in front of your friends, and don't feel like you need to impress nobody else. Don't feel like you need to impress no other females, something like that, because you need to come home. So having that instilled in him is critical for me. Being that, I don't want to say sounding board, but just reminding him of how important that is. Because now you have YouTube, you have, and plus 10, 15 years from now, all of this stuff that's happening today, this is how I'm going to teach you. This is what can happen to you. Those brutal truths. Um, and those are things that I believe are, they shouldn't be, but they're better off gender specific. I would feel more comfortable having that conversation with him. Um, there's less emotion and more fact. Not that I care about him any less, but obviously his mom is a very nurturing mom, and I think that's probably one of her greatest assets. Um, you don't want for her to get emotional having those conversations because it's going to make him feel really uncomfortable with, in case something like that happens, he can't go to her, or he might not feel as comfortable going to her. She would say it, but just natural. Like, you don't want to let down your parent. You don't want to make your parents sad. The same thing happened to me and my mom. If the whole situation was reversed, we go on YouTube, she pull up what happened in the 60s and 70s. My mom's from Tennessee, town probably 500, 600 people. So slavery, racism, prevalent. There's a couple gas stations and one mall. That's it. So she has those conversations with me and she start crying uncontrollably because of what she went through, or what she doesn't want to happen to me. If something like that were to happen to me, I'm not going to feel as comfortable going to my mom as opposed to my pop, right? So that's just where that, I guess you draw a line the same with that. And it goes back to being respectful, eye contact, honor, um, standing with poise, sitting with poise, and standing with poise, sitting with posture, um, and how you treat your parents and how your parents treat you is going to be a direct reflection to how you should treat other people. Don't put yourself into compromising positions to potentially catch a record, to potentially get arrested. God forbid, I gotta see you and identify your body. Um, it's just a difficult thing really to think about, because as parents, you never want to picture the inevitable happen to your child, and vice versa. You as a child, I'm mid-30s. I don't want to picture burying my mom or my pop, right? So that teaching story how to move is situational based too. Being cognizant of excuse me for the by the way. Being cognizant of what's age appropriate is important. I don't need to teach you what could happen to you in your 30s and your six, because you're not gonna understand it. It took me a while to get there. His mom communicated that to me very eloquently a few times, but it took for me to really digest it and to really see the importance, right? So teaching them how to move. I miss anything else? All good? Cool. If my pop was around, I would have had more of a confidence to become a man. When I turned 18, I wasn't I wasn't mentally prepared. Um, I would have had more of a masculine look on life, from a I can't disappoint you perspective. When you in the street, you don't really have like any big homies that you can't like talk to really about like family, and because they become your family in a sense, right? But you still have to watch people, because when you can come up, but you can't come up too hard, because now they envy you. So now you can't put that trust in them, because you already know in the back of your head, like, okay, if I look like this, if I drive this car, I get this type of money. If I had my pop, I wouldn't have had all of that. I just would have been trying to emulate, because I knew growing up I wanted to emulate everything that he did, because he was my dad. If he was a left hand, I grew up right handed. I'm trying to shoot basketballs with my left hand. I'm trying to write my left hand. Pop, I can do this, because I wanted to impress him. The way how he made people feel at ease and stuff like that, I would have been able to um, successfully do that just with his guidance, not with learning on my own, because I feel like I need to show him up, or I feel like I need to, okay, I can do this too. This is what you missed, right? My pops is like the biggest handyman ever. I'm barely able to touch anything he able to do. Right? So being able to, and that made me mad for a long time. Like, it'd be certain things like, boy, my pop didn't teach me how to do that. Like, well, my pop didn't teach me how to shave. Well, my pop didn't teach me how to fix this. And Fast forward, that hurts dating, right? That hurts dating. So I'm like, I need to be more of a independent thinking individual. I need to not rest on this particular laurel that because I didn't learn this from Pop, I can't learn it. And I need to not blame him because okay, he's gone. Life got to continue and go on. I didn't have that. I'm gonna teach you how to tie a shoe. I'm gonna teach you how to tie a tie. My cousin taught me how to do that. I didn't have those, sex talks about girls with pops. I didn't have the normal, I guess you could say, transitioning steadily from being a young boy to a man conversations and just overall situations because they were so bad. And my pops was 20 when I was born. So about 20, 21 years apart. And I held resentment toward him until I probably was in my 30s. Um, and it took me to look at the birth certificate a couple of times to be like, all right, my dad was 20. He was a kid himself, you know? I chose to name my son's story. Uh, Being honest, coming from where I'm from, you're not expected to live long. Uh, and we're in a stage where leaving a legacy is important, is imperative, is critical, is crucial, but it becomes oversaturated, you know. But I wanted to make sure that, a thought crossed my mind. Obviously my mom's dad, my grandpa, um, died. My mom was too. Something like it. My son, and obviously his grandmother, rest her soul, died a month after he was born. If something happens to me, that my main output, my main objective, what I want for you, no matter what you do in life, make history at it. So whenever somebody speaks to you, high story, put that word together is history. So no matter what happens, my expectation of you every time somebody greets you. And I still find myself grappling with a lot. I find myself grappling with you weren't there. I need to make sure that I'm there for my son, but balancing it with the present of repeatedly telling myself I am a good dad. And it's not about solely finances, materials, it's time, respect, honor, and my character. I My son buying into who I am as a person has helped me to be more forgiving to my dad for what I went through with him from a father son perspective. Um, Seeing how his mom is such a great mom for him helps me to forgive and be definitely more accountable and apologetic for the things that I put my mom through. Uh, and having those conversations with both parents, definitely my dad first, it took those arguments that I addressed earlier. It took the leaving, the going back, the overall Zen moment of I'm not gonna cuss no more. I'm not gonna yell. I'm not going to snap back. And as a man, that's like you need your respect, right? If anything, you're going to respect who I am at the end of the day. I had to learn that it's more important to have peace than to be right. And being able to have those conversations with my dad, it took those arguments with his mom and it took coming to that mental peace and realizing how important that mental peace is to be forgiven to him. To my mom, it took for me to reflect on the arguments with her when I was younger because my dad wasn't in the picture on both sides. And it took for the disagreements and the things that I kept in house and didn't keep in house with my son's mom, and seeing the things that my son does that are displeasing towards me and his mom, for me to jump back and apologize to my mom, right? Those, I didn't know what I was doing at this age, or I'm sorry I put you through this. And story reminds me just like me whenever I did this. And you said that I was this way, and how did you deal with it? So it led for me to have more open-ended conversation with my mom, to ask questions. And with my dad, it led for me to be more forgiving. The only time that I would have those daddy, where have you been conversations, I would massage it into the pain and the anger and the arguments, the disagreements, the button of heads, that typically happen when you have a newborn, and a toddler, infant. You add on Harvey, you add on family death, you add on careers changing. Those are all things that helped me to see my own parenting skills, where I need to improve, where I have improved, and how important family is. You know, we always say that whole term of family first, but even if I'm away or if I'm present, um, that whole grind is to make sure that story makes history. That's it.